She deleted his messages twice, blocked him, ignored every attempt he made to reach out. But he didn't give up, and that persistence would lead to a love story that would cost her friends, face public humiliation on the subway, and force her to choose between her homeland and her heart. This is the story of Katya from Russia and Frank from the Congo, and how a simple message on social media became the beginning of everything. It started in St. Petersburg, Russia, where Katya lived her normal life, scrolling through social networks like anyone else. Then one day, a message appeared. It was from Frank, a man from the Congo who had somehow found her profile. She looked at it, rolled her eyes, and deleted it. He wrote again. She deleted it again. This went on for weeks. Most men would have gotten the hint and moved on, but Frank was different. He kept trying, kept showing up in her inbox, refusing to let this connection slip away. Finally, after months of his relentless efforts, Katya gave in. They started talking, and 2 months into their conversations, something shifted inside her. She agreed to meet him for a date. The moment she saw him in person, everything changed. It was love at first sight, the kind you read about, but never really believe exists. She knew it was real about a month later when she had to leave St. Petersburg for work, traveling to another city for an entire month. The distance hit her like a freight train. She missed Frank in a way that physically hurt, in a way she'd never experienced before. That's when she understood this wasn't just attraction or infatuation. This was something much deeper. 6 months into their relationship, Frank asked her to marry him. It was romantic, thoughtful, everything she'd hoped for. She said yes, without hesitation. But then came the conversation that would change everything. Half a year after they decided to get married, Frank told her his plan. He wanted them to move to Congo together, to build their life in Africa, to have many children, and to create a home in a place completely foreign to her. Katya had never imagined leaving Russia. A year before meeting Frank, learning French wasn't even on her radar. But love has a way of rewriting your entire future. The language barrier was real and frustrating. Frank spoke French, and while he knew Russian after studying it for 7 years, there were still moments when words got lost in translation. Katya would say something and Frank would pause, trying to decode what she meant. She started learning French, stumbling through pronunciations and grammar rules, preparing herself for a life in a French-speaking country. It was difficult, exhausting even, but it was necessary. Their worlds were vastly different. He came from a culture she knew nothing about. She came from a country where people like him were treated as less than human. That's when the racism started. Katya had lived her entire life in Russia without ever truly witnessing open, vicious racism. But the moment she started dating Frank, she saw it everywhere. People stared at them on the street. In restaurants, other diners would point and whisper. She'd been called an inkwell more than 100 times. Friends stopped talking to her. People she thought cared about her suddenly had opinions about her choices, her relationship, her future. Some weren't subtle about their disgust. One day, they went to a coffee shop. Just a simple outing, the kind of mundane moment couples take for granted. They stood at the counter, waiting to order, when the barista looked at Frank and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "What a monkey!" Katya's blood boiled. She started a scene right there, yelling at the cashier, defending her husband, refusing to let that hatred go unchallenged. They left without their coffee. It wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. But that incident burned into her memory because of how casual it was, how normalized this kind of cruelty had become. She remembers another day on the subway, April 27th, 2023. She was riding alone when she witnessed an African man accidentally bump into a Russian passenger. The subway was packed, People were pushing against each other. It was unavoidable. The African man immediately apologized in English because he didn't speak Russian well. The Russian man started screaming at him, berating him, humiliating him in front of everyone. Katya couldn't stay silent. She stepped in and defended the stranger, telling the Russian man exactly what she thought of his behavior. In that moment, she realized something profound. She felt like she was black herself. As strange as it sounded, marrying Frank had given her a glimpse into what it meant to live with a different skin color in Russia. She'd posted about her husband on social media once and received over 100 insults in 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. All because she loved a black man. But through all the hatred, all the stares, all the lost friendships, Katya and Frank's relationship only grew stronger. They didn't argue much. They had built something based on trust and understanding. Two things she'd learned were rare and precious. She'd been in relationships before with Russian men, relationships that left her feeling drained and undervalued. She'd dated men who cheated, men who showed up to dates while they had wives and young children at home. She dealt with men who expected her to do everything while they contributed nothing. Frank was different. He cooked dinner. He cleaned the house. Sometimes he'd even scold her for throwing her things around and not putting them away properly. He treated her like a partner, not a servant. The decision to move to Congo wasn't easy. It meant leaving everything familiar behind. It meant facing a new language barrier, this time in a country where she'd be the foreigner. It meant adapting to different food, different customs, different expectations. She knew that in many African cultures, having guests at home constantly was a sign of status. She knew she might have to cook for large groups regularly unless they could afford a housekeeper. She knew Frank came from a culture where some men were polygamous, though they'd discussed that immediately and he'd assured her that wasn't something he wanted. She knew there would be challenges she couldn't even anticipate yet. Then came the year-long separation. Frank had to leave for work, and Katya had to stay behind to prepare for the move to Africa. A full year apart. It terrified her. She cried constantly at first, worried their communication would die out, worried the distance would kill what they'd built. But something unexpected happened. The distance made them stronger. They talked every day, sometimes through video calls, sometimes through voice messages. They watched movies and TV shows together using special platforms, finding ways to feel close despite the thousands of miles between them. Frank kept taking the initiative, kept sending her money, even when sanctions made it nearly impossible to transfer funds internationally. He found ways to make her feel loved from across the world. When that year ended, on February 7th, 2024, Katya realized something important. Their love hadn't faded, it had deepened. The separation had confirmed what she'd always hoped was true. Their love was mutual, real, and worth every sacrifice. Frank missed her madly. She missed him just as intensely. And now, they were finally preparing for her permanent move to Congo, ready to start the life they'd been dreaming about since that first date in St. Petersburg. Looking back, Katya sometimes thinks about how close she came to never knowing Frank at all. She'd deleted his messages twice. She'd ignored him for months. If he'd given up, if he'd decided she wasn't worth the effort, none of this would have happened. She wouldn't have fallen in love. She wouldn't have learned French. She wouldn't have discovered the depths of racism in her own country. She wouldn't have lost friends who revealed their true colors. She wouldn't be preparing to move to Africa to build a family with the man who saw something in her worth fighting for. Their story isn't a fairy tale. It's messy and complicated. It involves sacrifice and pain. It means dealing with people who think their love is wrong, simply because of the color of Frank's skin. It means Katya being called a traitor to her homeland by people who can't understand why she'd choose happiness in another country over staying in a place where she and her husband are treated like spectacles. But it's also a story about what happens when you choose love over fear, when you refuse to let other people's hatred dictate your future, And when you find someone who complements you so perfectly that the world's opinions stop mattering. Katya calls herself and Frank coffee with milk, two different colors that blend into something beautiful. She doesn't notice his accent anymore. She understands him instantly, even when he makes mistakes in Russian. She's learned that women are reciprocal, that they reflect back the energy their partners give them. Frank gave her attention, care, tenderness, and warmth. He made her feel secure and valued, and in return, she became the kind of partner who trusts him completely, who doesn't check his phone or interrogate him about every text message, who lets him have his space because she's confident in what they've built together. Katya boarded that plane and left Russia behind. She arrived in Congo, and now they're living the dream they talked about for so long. The transition wasn't easy. She struggled with French, just as she expected, navigating daily conversations in a language that still trips her up. She adapted to new customs, new rhythms of life, new expectations. But she's building a home in this foreign country with the man who made it all worth it. Now, living in Congo together, they're working toward having the many children they've always wanted, traveling to new places, and creating the life filled with love and adventure they promised each other back in St. Petersburg. They're proving every single day that two people from completely different worlds can build something lasting and beautiful. And soon, they'll finally see what their children will look like, the physical embodiment of their love that crosses continents and defies the racism that tried to keep them apart. Sometimes, you never know where you'll meet your destiny. For Katya, it was a message she almost never answered from a man who refused to give up. If you've ever felt like love is worth fighting for, or if you believe that two people from different worlds can build something real together, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more stories about love that defies all odds.